So the Gauteng ANC leader, Banyazala Sufi, saying the DA's court victory today in Johannesburg will be short-lived. Let's get to the reaction now of ActionSA and speak to the party's national chairperson, Michael Beaumont. Michael, a very good afternoon to you. Your reaction then to the news breaking in the last hour.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good news because I think we must be clear. What took place in Johannesburg was nothing short of a coup. The motions of no confidence that were tabled were patently unlawful, and they were pushed through with the narrow party political interests of the ANC returning to government. I think from that perspective, they must be welcomed. The question I think that has to be on the minds of Joburg residents today is whether this will be a reinstatement of the coalition government for a couple of days or a week, or whether this could be a reinstatement that lasts a full year term of office. From an ActionSA standpoint, we've publicly communicated our availability to our coalition partners to be available for any talks that ensure that this coalition doesn't just last a couple of days or a week, but last a full term of office. Tembagile, if I may say, it's just so important to understand from the local government standpoint, the challenges faced in the city of Johannesburg cannot be fixed in opposition. We cannot fight corruption in opposition, and we have to govern for a full 5-year term of office to be able to turn around the legacy of failure in the city. It is that simple.
So one of the issues, right, central to whether or not the meetings in the lead-up to this motion of no confidence, which was then used to remove Phalatse, was legitimate, was around whether or not that meeting reached a quorum, and the presence of your member, Funzi Ngubeni, your councillor, was central to that. He was at the meeting, but then excused himself. How do you intend to move forward now that the DA is back?
I think the bottom line is our member was at that meeting to oversee the fact that there was a loss of quorum. The recording of that loss of quorum was essential to the success of the court case that has been adjudicated upon today. And I think the point is that ActionSA is communicating to all of our coalition partners that we're available for any talks day and night between now and Thursday to ensure that this coalition government sustains for the full term of office. That is ActionSA's commitment, and we will live up to that commitment.
What commitment then would you seek from the Democratic Alliance in order to guarantee your support in council going forward?
Well, I think the Democratic Alliance and all our coalition partners need to come together. There needs to be a reflection on what has taken place. But most importantly, there needs to be a plan going forward for how this coalition will re-establish a majority in the City of Johannesburg Council. That's got to be the most important point. We can deal with the areas of disagreement at a later point in time, but the most important project right now that the ANC is out of office, is to ensure that that situation persists, that this coalition government can survive 5 years, and the only way that can happen is if we can work to re-establish our majority, and we make that the priority of the coalition.
Can that majority be maintained without the DA giving up the Speaker position, because that was central, was it not, to much of the fallout which ultimately led to the rise of Colleen Makwele from COPE and the ANC's Dada Morero, who then became mayor?
Yeah, well, I think certainly that was central to the departure of the Patriotic Alliance from the coalition. All the other coalition partners remained along the coalition line and supported a DA speaker, even though we disagreed with the line of approach that was taken on that issue. But I think what has to be understood is that we need to work as a coalition to reinstate this majority. And that has to be done for service delivery, for the fight against corruption, for the residents of Johannesburg, and that has to come before every other consideration.
You mentioned the residents. Of course, that's important when you consider the impact of a revolving door of mayors for the delivery of services, and also, I don't know if you'd agree, being able to measure who served the people best isn't yet impossible at this point when you can barely keep up with who's actually in charge.
Absolutely, and I think political instability, the likes of which we've seen in the coalitions in Johannesburg, ultimately affects service delivery and affects the residents. You have tens of thousands of municipal officials in the city of Johannesburg. They need clear political direction, and how can they possibly be provided with such, where 1 week it's this coalition and the next week it's that coalition? There needs to be stability for the next 4 years, and that is why we are saying that has to be our commitment, because when the official DIM understands the political direction that they are receiving, that translates into better service delivery for our residents.
So, just finally, Michael, I know that you said that you are committed still to trying to make a coalition with the DA work. Will you reach out first, or will you wait for them to call you?
No, absolutely. We are reaching out. I see already in our discussion groups, meetings are being organized for this afternoon, which is welcome development. I think really what we are saying, and we're saying publicly, because we mustn't deal with these conversations behind closed doors, Parties must publicly commit to make this coalition work, to making sure it sustains 5-year term of office, to keeping the ANC out, because this is what political parties said when they went to the voters in 2021. And I think it's important that those political parties demonstrate that same commitment now in this particular scenario.
Do you think, though, given everything that's transpired in the last 2 months or so, or the last month and a half, that the DA has perhaps been, shall we say, quote unquote, even with this court victory, humbled enough to be willing to make concessions that it previously was not willing to budge on?
It would be difficult to say, and I think, to be dead honest with you, Tembegile, we would like to create the space for talks to succeed. In that regard, I don't want to engage in an exercise of bashing a potential coalition partner in the scenario. We want the best possible prospect for this coalition to succeed, and we will see if the Democratic Alliance can come to the table with an improved attitude. Certainly, if they do, they will find a receptive ActionSA, and I imagine a number of other parties as well.
Michael Beaumont from ActionSA, good to have your time, sir. Thank you very much. Reacting to the breaking news that we'll bring up for you shortly, continuing to monitor outcomes from the High Court today, which has found that the removal of Phalatse through a motion of no confidence by the Joburg Council last month was unconstitutional, invalid, and has now set it aside.